Hi and welcome to Dynamics Update. We are back again for a new episode, and with me, as usual, I have my colleague Gustav Sundblad. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm really good. I've
Nice.
had a long day.
Yeah.
This episode is actually one where we have two guests, not just one. We have two guests. We are actually revisiting a sort of a subject that we had before, but I'll start with letting the guests introduce themselves. So let's start with Shivam.
Hey everyone, and Johan and Gustav, thanks for having us on the show. I'm Shivam, and I work at Microsoft, and I lead the portfolio for data analytics and insights, and that includes things like archiving, business performance analytics, and financial reporting and management reporting. I've been here at the company for a while. Worked previously in the finance areas, then moved more into the reporting areas. So looking forward to the conversation.
hmm Very nice.
And then we also have Roger here.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, Johan and Gustav. My name is Roger. I'm the product manager for the archival and long-term retention solution in FNO. So I'm working closely with Shivam and to make the solution more stable and reliable for all of our customers. So I will be working for Microsoft for 4 years and starting from SCM areas. So now I'm mainly focused on the data management strategy in Microsoft FNO area.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us. And I mean, this topic, archiving and long-term retention, it doesn't sound that fun, right? But it's a very, very interesting and very important topic, especially now in light with Dataverse storage costs, right? A lot of customers and partners out there are struggling. I'm not going to say struggling, but they're working to ensure stability, both from a cost-saving perspective, which is important, but also from a performance perspective, of course. And it has been around, but can you tell us where are we now with the archiving and long-term retention? I mean, what is the state of it right now in the, let's say, latest version, 46?
Okay, actually the latest version is 47 in private preview.
Yeah, sure.
So we have new scenarios introduced with the 47 private preview. Is a warehouse load and work archival scenarios. So this is point number one. A new scenarios come in with the latest FNO version. And point number two, our team, we are currently working to make the archival functionality more resilient and support large number of records can be processed successfully in a single table. So previously, there's a hard limitation. Archival solution only supports up to 500 million records in a single table. But now we remove this hard limitation, which means currently the archival solution can support unlimited record in one single table in an archival job. And recently, we have observed some customers, they are successfully run the archival job for a single table contains more than 2 and 3 billion records and successful.
Wow. Yeah, that's a hefty license cost before the archiving, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, right. And with this new enhancement, the new feature, the archival solution is more stable. And starting from January this year, we have seen a huge increment of the job successful from all around the world, from our customers. And we have observed that archival throughput has some increase compared to a couple of months ago. So maybe we can deep dive into details in the later session.
Yeah, definitely. But I think also maybe all of our listeners might not know about the details. What it is about, and you can fill me in here in the details. What you're doing is basically first. There's a couple of steps involved here, if I'm not mistaken, right? First, we archive into a table within ERP, but it's not. We don't keep indexes, right? So we kind of reduce storage, correct?
Exactly.
That's the first step, and then you can set up retention rules to push that data outside of ERP to Dataverse, and that's where the long-term retention comes in, right?
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. And the main aspect of the process, but there's some sequential sequence. So for a single archive job, the record is actually first moved from FNO to Dataverse, and after the movement completed, then we will move the data from live table to history table. by getting rid of the indexing. So you can see the transaction data is actually has a backup in the history table and saving by getting rid of this index, so you can get the storage reduced in the FNO, and you can see all those transaction data are returned in the Dataverse. So the reason we have the history table, you can have the capability to regrade, which means if you say, hey, we don't want to archive this data, we want the business back. So you have capability to restore those archived data from history table back to a lab table. That would make your business back to normal.
Yeah, okay. So that's nice to have an initial like regret option, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. And that's good if you want to play around.
So one question there: when you say restore back to live table, that does mean that we have to pick a time and restore everything from current back to that time, or can we restore like individual transactions? I'm guessing that we can't because it's sort of on a timeline.
Well, this restore mechanism is like a reverse of each individual archive job. So what's the data set you defined in one job, you can restore this job. So which means if you define a archive job for 1 month time frame, then once this job is completed, you can restore this job, which means 1 month of the record will be restored back to live table.
Okay.
Right, and it's to preserve the referential integrity, right, of the system.
Yeah.
Because when we export the data out, we do not, we make sure that the system continues to work when the data has been removed from the database and moved into the secondary storage. So that is a key aspect, that you extract everything together. If you want to reverse it together, and you're back to the normal state that you were before. So.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. So basically what it means when we initiate this process, we get like an initial bump of storage, really, because we're moving the data to Dataverse before we're archiving, right? So when you enable this, you need to be kind of mindful that initially you will see a little bit of a bump in the data, but then you will be able to archive it, correct? At least from a Dataverse perspective, right? Because you mentioned that you were duplicating, the first step would be to enable the data to flow to Dataverse, right? So that would mean that you get like an initial bump in Dataverse data before you can activate the archiving, right?
Yeah. So so the storage layers are different between the AX database, SQL, and the lake storage, right? The Delta storage, etc. that we have there. So there's a different level of compression that exists between the two. And I'm answering it from a very larger perspective,
of course.
covering some breadth here. And so when you start the archiving process and you move your data to history, in that interim step, when we create a copy, the indexed copy of the data in the history, the sizes grow, the table size within AXDB will grow. But once the data has been copied over to the lake and compressed in the Delta storage, and you delete your history record because you no longer need it. You're verified that it continues to work and you can run your business. The overall storage goes down significantly. So you're right. In the first instance of move to history, it increases for a while, and then as you move it out to the lake and you delete the history, you free up space in your.
Yeah, exactly. It's a temporary bump, right? So it's only to be able to actually initiate, and also to be able to have this backup or regret option, right? Which is very nice. And what data are we talking about here in the initial? I know InventTrans is one of the tables. You mentioned load lines as well, one of the more transaction-heavy tables. So what data are we talking about that this would be available in 47 when it becomes GA?
Now we have some features already GAs in the archive framework. Let's say we support the general ledger, we support sales order, the retail transaction, and inventory journal, and the text transaction, of course. So that's all supported in GA scenarios. And of course, we have some scenarios currently in primary preview, such as the InventTrans origin, the customer invoice, and of the InventTrans itself. Now is in primary preview together with the enhancement to the InventTrans consolidation, which we detect some previous regression. Now in 47 version, the InventTrans is back to archival scope and in private preview.
Okay. And can you tell me a little more about, because I'm very interested in InvenTrans. Both Johan and I have been in many projects where you come in and you take out in AX, you took out the SQL report, like all the large tables. Now we can do pretty much the same, but we do it in Dataverse and PPAC. So you kind of always look at the same, you always see the same tables. And there's a lot of different strategies here. Of course, you need to do staging, data cleanup, and all of that stuff with data you don't really need, right? But is there, what kind of volumes do you see people are moving? How much are they able to reduce? Because I'm thinking the InvenTrans consolidation, you need to save some of that data, right, to be able to retain like inventory sum and on-hand capabilities.
Yes,
Is that
correct. Yes, correct. The InvenTrans consolidation is a prerequisite for the InvenTrans archival. So basically, the InvenTrans archival is the archival for the data in the InvenTrans consolidation table.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not touching the original InvenTrans table through the InvenTrans archival solution. So so we take it in 2 steps. First step, InvenTrans consolidation. So this step is to reduce the transaction, the record in the InvenTrans table and consolidate it in the InvenTrans consolidation. And second step is we are doing the InvenTrans consolidation archival to move the data from InvenTrans consolidation to Dataverse.
Okay. All right. But I'm going to look into the technical details here when I get to play around with it. I'm just thinking about how the calculations of actual on-hand works then, because it's always going from the initial receipt and then you calculate down to the current levels. But I'm guessing that is a solution. If you take away the summarized records, then how do we kind of retain the on-hand value? So I'm looking forward to seeing those details.
Yeah, absolutely.
How it works with keeping on-hand tracking.
And back to the data compression ask, depends on the dimension customer used in the InvenTrans. So the InvenTrans consolidation is different customer by customer based on their nature of the business. And from our observation or some study from the customer jobs, so among the different type of InvenTrans or different archival scenarios, we can see up to 50 or 60% of the storage compression after the customer successfully executes the archival job to this transaction table, InvenTrans transaction table or the text transaction, general ledger transaction. So they can see the X database storage deduct. Plus, they can see some incremental in their history table, but the overall storage is deduct through these successful archival jobs.
All right, very cool. I have a question on Dataverse side, and because Johan and I are mainly, F&O people nowadays, of course, and over the last couple of years, we've had to, of course, learn about Power Platform and Dataverse. But when you say the first step here is to archive it to a historical table within ERP, we push the Dataverse, of course.
Yes.
Then the next step, as you mentioned as well, Shivam, you can enable them when the data is in Dataverse. Then you have the same options as we have today, like with Fabric Link or Synapse Link, to push the data to BI or to data warehouse or to whatever means of long-term storage you want. So that's then the final step, right? To push the data out, and then in the last stage, then you can delete the data from Dataverse as well. But there is, I read about, there is some kind of setting there. So initially you can have it readily available in Dataverse, and then you can actually flag it to be marked for archiving or marked for deletion. How does that work? When I want to have like an automated deletion of the data in Dataverse once it's actually pushed to either OneLake or to Synapse or through Synapse to other data warehouse storage. Is that also something you configure then on Power Platform side or in Dataverse?
There are a couple of things I want to say in there in your question that I want to add some flavors to. One is that today the technology that we're using to move the data out from FNO into the lake is Synapse Link, and then today we use entities to move this data out into the lake. And from there on, folks can move it out to their own lakes and delete it from the lake. Now, I've not yet remember what the exact steps are to go do that. Maybe Roger will fill us on that, or maybe we'll follow up with certain steps we can put on the channel, right, for everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Although I would say that, like, when you're moving data out, let's be very strategic about it, because as the agentic ERP evolves and more of the functions within ERP are automated through agents, including analysis of data and producing insights. That being the key driver to automation within the ERP, that data will become the key insight provider for you, right? The oil that provides that insight for you. So that you need, every customer has to think strategically about, like, what they do and what they move. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think and that is a very complex topic, right, as well, because once you have it in Dataverse storage isn't cheap either. So, but one lake, I mean, I'm not going to go into a cost discussion here. That might be too complicated as well. But at the end, as you say, Shivam, in order to draw conclusions or act upon your data, you need to have the data readily accessible somewhere, and that might be one lake as well, because it's a perfectly valid knowledge source. So, and I think, as you say, then that is a strategy depending on the customer and the needs. So it boils down to, and again, of course, from a transaction type, there are many, many differences in, as you mentioned as well, Roger, ledger transactions. There, maybe the driver or the constraint there might not be cost. The constraint might be legal demands, right? That's a different story. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it depends by country, but normally it's like, 7 years, but that does not mean, I'm not a legal expert, but that normally doesn't mean that you have to keep it within the ERP for 7 years. You just need to have it readily available somewhere. Also, very important thing to consider. So don't delete the data, just archive it somewhere. That's a pretty important thing to remember.
Okay, so I'm wondering also, do you know, guys, if there is any way, I mean, once we move data out to like Fabric or to our own data lake, usually we also, I guess, need to like consolidate the data there as well, because otherwise we will fill Fabric up with more and more and more and more data. So being able to consolidate like historical data would probably be a good thing there as well, right?
Yeah, okay. We have seen some customers, they are using the Fabric link to read the data directly to the history table. And because in the history table, we have a field flag. This flag value could tell Fabric which data is the archived data in the history table. So they can read and sync through the Fabric link. And on the other hand, we see some customers, they are using the Fabric link directly to the data returned in the Dataverse through the shortcut, so they can using this returned data, we call it archive data in Dataverse, as the data source for their downstream reporting system as the data source.
Okay, yeah, and that does make a lot of sense as well, because once you move into Parquet or either using Synapse or Fabric, the index question kind of goes away, right? Because it's always going to be, so you need ETL anyway to move it into some kind of model. Which drives me to my next question as well. And you mentioned, Shivam, on BPA. So how is BPA, this performance analytics, impacted by this archiving solution when it comes to loading the model for BPA? Is that something covered within BPA or in this solution?
So currently, BPA and archiving shares the same pipeline move from AX into the lake. And then the raw store is the same. So if the data is there, BPA can read it, and you can utilize it in reporting. So you can do reporting on all your archive data that's not in your operations system.
ERP. Yeah.
So that's available today. As we are moving, scaling our stacks here, we will be moving BPA from entities to tables in the lake instead. right? So that provides extended extensibility for our partners when more extensibility is available in BPA, because you don't have to write entities anymore. The whole table structures, including your customizations, will land in the lake, and then you can access it for your reporting. We will move archiving subsequently there as well. That is our goal. But in the interim, there might be a period where these two things are not aligned completely, where you have to do some. I don't know if you can do anything there, but they might not be aligned fully. They're completely.
No,
and
I get it.
That's the goal. That they're completely.
Yeah, I get it. And it kind of boils down to if you need to archive your data historically, do you also need it to be included into reporting? Because I'm guessing a little bit here, but from an on hand and like value reporting, you're not going to delete the values without having some kind of starting point. So all the reports will still be correct. You just won't be able to go into the details of historical transactions. But it's a complicated topic, right? Something to be very mindful of if you're using BPA, to just ensure that you know what's happening. I think that's very important. And I mean, I have a lot of clients as well that use external data warehouses or other solutions, right? But we still use Fabric Link or Synapse Links to provide the data, and also using BPA. I think the BPA model is fantastic because it kind of gives you a lot of relational understanding of the dynamics normalized data model. So understanding dynamics data is using BPA model to understand dynamics data is very helpful. And then it's, as you say, Shivam, if you move into the table model down the line as well, that makes things even easier then to use. As long as you push the data somewhere and use the model, then you will have access to it. But important to keep in mind. Yeah,
and just to add to that, right, on the BPA side, like today we offer measure extensibility, so you can create your own measures. We'll be adding column and table extensibility soon here, so any data can be accessible through BPA for your reporting needs, and also then to your agents and Copilot to reason over that data as well.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really where you said exactly what you said as well. That's the Kickstarter and the oil, as you mentioned, for agentic ERP, right? Having that data accessible in all of your agentic scenarios, I think that's one of the key enablers here. So also something to be mindful of. So we're not just hitting the delete button. We're actually kind of being more sensible in how we store the data. I think that's the way to cut it.
Yeah,
at least I hope. I have. Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking about this archival and BPA, so we understand the data, that's the value to customer business. So not only the data stored in the standard table, but also the data stored in the customer table. So that's one more thing I'd like to point out that for our team, we will soon to ship new features in the coming weeks that we can enable our ISVs or partners to build, or customer to build customer scenarios by using the archival framework. So you can have the capability to build your own archival scenarios to include all your customer tables. And this is pretty significant improvement for the archive framework, that we can support standard table plus the customer table. Then you can have your capability to build the solution.
That's amazing. I think because not all custom solutions come with a delete or a cleanup job, right? That's at least in my experience. The best ones do, of course, but let's be honest, not all of them do. And I think that's an amazing contribution as well, and it will help a lot. I have a question on once we brought up customizations. I read a little bit on it. The historical tables that we create for these types of tables that we're archiving. If you have customizations or extensions in the standard tables, they also need to be reflected in the history tables, correct? But that is something that you need to do yourself, right? The archiving solution doesn't cover that. You need to deploy those extensions as well to the history tables, correct?
Yes, correct. The history table, the schema should be kept consistent with the extended left table, the standard table.
Okay, good. So that's something to bear in mind, and I think I read it somewhere as well. Important thing it's a new thing to bear in mind when you start projects, right? We know we need to think about performance, we need to think about testing, we need to think about a lot of things when we develop and when we implement projects and solutions here. Storage is also an important thing to consider here, because when you go live, there is not a problem, but soon all the transactions fill up, so the problem will become bigger sooner. So it's a very important thing to consider from the start, ensuring that you have a process for adding those customizations to the history tables from the start, basically, so you can enable archiving.
Yeah, beyond these customer scenario features, I have another exciting news I'd like to share with you guys. So our team is working on support the parallel processing for archive job. So in the past, there's a limitation that for archive job only can build by legal entity, and this job under one contract only can execute it in sequential. But now we are working on to release a new feature sooner to support the parallel processing that will be significantly improve the archival efficiency and reduce the end-to-end runtime for even large enterprise customers. They have hundreds of legal entities.
Very nice. So exactly, that was going to be a question of mine. How long do these jobs take for the 1 billion records tables? That's something you also need to be mindful of, I guess. But if you have parallel processing, but you mean parallel processing, you mean one process per legal entity, not parallel processing within the same table or the same legal entity, or is it both?
It's different. So the parallel processing basically is a parallel under one scenarios and multiple jobs. Mm-hmm. Each job contains the record from different legal entity.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so improving performance of the backup jobs or the archiving jobs.
Exactly.
I get it.
Exactly. Yes.
But is it fair to say that the first, I would believe at least, when you set this up, you do an analysis of how much data can we archive, and I'm guessing most likely you end up in a kind of year rule set, right? So we can archive data that is older than, let's say, 5 years. So the initial archiving is the cumbersome one. I'm guessing here that will take some time, but then at least how I would do it is to set it up on a frequency then and kind of archive once a month, and then the consecutive jobs will become faster. So I'm guessing that it's a normal way of working, right? You plan it out, you do an initial one, but then you set up these jobs, and then again back to what you mentioned, Shivam, automation, right? So you want to automate these things. So
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll Roger give the detail, but that's from a vision perspective, that's where we are headed, right? Steady state archiving.
Exactly.
Or your ERP, right? Data continuously happening all the time. So you don't even have to worry about it.
No, exactly.
Right. You tell us what your business rules are around this. We will do it for you, right? Across, standard tables, customized tables, all tables, right? We will take care of the business rules and issues there, right? We'll present it to you. You can configure it, you can, and then enable it, right? That's where we want to head, one step at a time, and I'll let Roger provide the steps that we are moving towards. So.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then we'll sleep better at night knowing that the Dataverse and ERP storage is not hitting the caps or hitting the limits.
I'm sure I should find solutions for that too.
Cool. I just wanted to add one thing. I think I said this in the previous podcast we had on this subject as well. I am so impressed on the person who actually took on the job to try to figure out which table is connected to which tables and what we can delete in order to basically unnest the entire ball of yarn to figure out exactly the logic connections between all of the tables. I mean, I would probably go insane if I were try to figure that out. I am so impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe that is easier with standard data and tables because of the metadata and the way it's structured, right? So you can hopefully trust all the integrity of the metadata of standard code because it's up to a point, right? But as you mentioned, Roger, when you implement the way to do this on custom tables, again boils down to how well have you built your customizations, how well have you implemented the metadata and the relations. So that is very important for customers trying out or partners building this for custom tables because the rule set is only as good as you built it.
Exactly. The integrity is most important to keep the data consistent, moving out from X to the Dataverse. Then to keep the solution integrity, you have the capability to see the data in the Dataverse. Otherwise, you will causing the data lost or orphan data as a failure of your own customer solution.
Exactly.
Yes.
Very nice. All right, Johan, do you have anything to add? I think we're kind of hitting the not the limit, but I think we are at the end of the conversation at least.
Yep. I'm perfectly happy. I think this was a great talk, and it was really good getting a better understanding about how the archiving solution is about to work, and especially understanding what the timeline looks like, and when customers can start looking into this and start working with it, and so on, and the timeline for the new entities and scenarios and stuff. So I think that was really, really good. So thank you, Shivam and Roger, for joining us. This was really good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back with a new episode. Yeah, we'll be back with a new episode so soon. So bye to our listeners as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.